Yu-Gi-Oh! GX has a load of characters, and anytime you got that many characters, you'd think there's an ensemble approach to the plot. But nope, Judai does everything, which means a lot of characters are underdeveloped, misused, forgotten, or downright unnecessary. In this list, I'll count down the top 10 wasted characters of GX. A quick disclaimer, this list won't include any villains, which isn't to say that I think all the villains are great, but that their misuse isn't tied to the overuse of Judai. I'll probably do a separate video later on my issues with the GX villains, so be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on future content. With that, let's count them down. At number 10, I put Kronos de Medici. Kronos starts off as a buttoned-up professor who despises his lowest-ranked students of the school and basically functions as the lead antagonist during the first half of Season 1, going so far as to try and expel Judai. Eventually, Kronos begins to grow a soft spot for Judai and all the students, serving as a protector figure, from trying to keep the Osiris Red Dorm from being demolished, to volunteering to duel Camula, to raising concerns about the death duels that Cobra is holding, to even sacrificing himself to fend off the duel zombies, to being there to the bitter end alongside Judai, Sho, and Kaiser against Yubel. Where I would have expanded Kronos' role is pitting him against the other professor figures, basically like how he did versus Napoleon to save the Red Dorm. While Kronos starts off as the mean professor, seeing him actually go up against Cobra when the Chancellor turns a blind eye would have been an interesting duel. I also would have preferred to see Kronos take down a 7-star assassin to demonstrate that being the head of Obelisk Blue actually means something, but then get taken down by Amnel. This would have made for a great face-off between the dorm head you think is the good guy versus the dorm head you think is the bad guy. Overall, Kronos is by no means an egregious error on this list, but there were some chances to expand his role. Coming in at number 9 is Jim Crocodile Cook, the man known for the crocodile on his back and his one-word slogan,
What? Okay!
Jim was clearly introduced with one specific role in mind, the guy with the orichalcum eye, which will allow him to save a friend, which, you guessed it, turns out to be Judai when he is Hao, aka Supreme King. Now, let me be very clear here, Jim is a great character. He's a great duelist, has a cool mystique, has intrigue with the bandaged eye, has an interesting backstory, and above all else, he's a great friend. My issue with Jim goes one of 3 ways. 1, he should have been introduced earlier so he would have had more time to develop. Jim's display of friendship is incredibly powerful, but it's all tied to one brief moment where Judai befriends Karen. I get that Karen is super important to Jim, but I would have liked to see more development between Jim and Judai to really make Jim's motivations in Season 3 more believable. 2, keep him around for Season 4. Yes, I know there are some rumors about his voice actor leaving, but they could have just as easily replaced the VA or at least shown Jim just standing around during graduation. It comes across like they didn't really have an idea for what to do with Jim next, which, fine, if all a character needs to be is confined to his season, that's better than making him a punching bag in ensuing seasons like they do with so many other characters. But then that brings me to the third point, his character just didn't need to be there at all. And I know it's hard to hear that, as a Jim fan it's hard to say it, but one of the biggest flaws with an otherwise great Season 3 is the introduction of way too many characters that push everybody else to the wayside. Jim's role in early Season 3 could have been passed to Kenzan, while his role alongside O'Brien in later Season 3 could have been shared between O'Brien and Sho. So, Jim, I like you, but you either needed to show up earlier, or just not show up at all. Coming in at number 8 is Fubuki Tenjin. For the first 3 seasons, anytime Fubuki showed up on screen, all I could think of is, why does this guy exist? Season 4 finally did feature him and called back to his role in Season 1, so that was a nice development. My problem with Fubuki though is that he's pitched as one of the 3 best duelists in his class alongside Fujiwara and Kaiser, but he's the only one without an on-screen win. Like, I get that Judai has to be the one to defeat Darkness, but they could have at least allowed Fubuki to be the one to free his friend Fujiwara. Giving him a win while he was a 7-star would have also made sense to build him and Darkness up some more, instead of focusing so much on a character unrelated to anything else in the story like Camula. At number 7, I have Tyranno Kenzan. Kenzan is on the list of folks wildly obsessed with Judai to the point that it becomes his defining character trait despite having other unique aspects about him. Namely, he has a dinosaur bone in his leg that gives him dino DNA, as seen in how his eyes can become dino-like. This characteristic allows him to withstand brainwashing from the Society of Light, as well as turn into a dinosaur dual monster spirit that works in tandem with Neos to fly into space and stop the satellite from destroying the world. Okay, yeah, it's a bit out there, but seeing someone else other than Judai play a prominent role in the final battle is refreshing. Kenzan's a fiercely loyal guy who will gladly put his own life on the line for good, and we do get to see this briefly in Season 4 as well. The problem is he's one of those guys who clearly had a defined and prominent role in the season in which he's introduced, so season 2, then because of the other characters introduced in later seasons, he falls to the wayside. At number 6, I have Samejima. Samejima is probably most remembered for his Santa Claus vibe and wanting to win a kiss from Tome-san, and if they wanted to leave him as a joke character, that would have been fine, but the thing is they didn't, and if you're only a partially developed character, that's a quick way to find yourself on some guy's YouTube list of most wasted characters. Here's the thing, if you're like me, you probably found it odd that Samejima, the headmaster of Duel Academy, didn't volunteer himself as one of the 7 duels to take on the 7-star assassins, or Shadow Riders. The only logical conclusions were that either he was secretly the main villain, or he's not a duelist. Well, we learned that his Santa vibe is legit and thus not on the naughty list, but then what happened in Season 2? We learned he is in fact a duelist, and not just some run-of-the-mill duelist, but a practitioner of the cyber art and sensei to the Academy's best student from Season 1, Kaiser. So yeah, he's the real deal, and this was a nice little twist to demonstrate he's not just some jolly old fool. For the rest of the series though, he oscillates between aloof Santa and serious guy. From a dueling standpoint, his remaining ones come in Season 4, which include a joke duel and then a mostly off-screen loss to the Jinzo art guy, which is a story that comes out of nowhere to begin with. There were a couple opportunities to fit some duels, specifically by taking on Cobra to stand up for his students, or taking on Yubel when Yubel is trying to get the Phantasms because Samejima himself said he would protect the cards. Then he proceeded to not protect the cards. Duels aside, they could have also positioned Samejima as a caretaker for Judai, even if not an outright father figure. The anime starts in this direction right off the bat, as it's Samejima who instructs Kronos to let Judai take his entrance exam even though he was late. Samejima later reveals that the reason for this is because he's aware of Judai's connection to Yubel. He even invites Cobra to whip Duel Academy into shape specifically with Judai in mind, but we never really learn his motive for this. What's interesting is that Samejima plays this caretaker role for Edo as well, defending his vigilante dueling against Pegasus and saving him from a ship explosion. Combine that with his relationship to the Kaiser and watching over Judai, and you get a guy whose true motive is trying to find the Chosen One to defeat the Light of Destruction. The anime just didn't take that extra step to give him a defined purpose. Coming in at number 5 is Asa Tenjin. Asuka is a classic, we need a pretty female character to create sexual tension jokes. In Season 1, she's one of the 3 characters to get a win against a 7-star, coming against the guy who had kidnapped her earlier in the season, so that's a good start. Aside from that, her most prominent role is when she's brainwashed into the Society of Light, during which she doesn't really do anything other than defeat that wine guy. Considered one of the top 3 duelists in Obelisk Blue and even having her own subplot of finding her lost brother, it would have made sense for her to at least get to duel Fubuki while he was a 7-star, even if you don't think she should have been the one to defeat him. Season 3 onwards though, she's very much relegated to the sidelines like much of the other early cast. And of all the little conclusion stories in Season 4, hers is probably the least satisfactory since the writers never gave her a North Star to chase like Sho or Manjome. So last second they said, alright, you'll be a teacher at Duel Academy. At number 4 I have Jun Manjome. Manjome starts off the series as the heir apparent to Kaiba in terms of rival to the protagonist. Everything from his arrogance to his money to running the Alphabet Union series all mirrors Kaiba. Fortunately, the writers took Manjome in a different and more interesting direction, turning him into a close ally and someone who has a connection to monster spirits. But the one thing that sticks is that the dude cannot get a win over Judai, despite 6 cracks at him. Now to his credit, he does win Gen X, though that only comes after all the other best duels drop out for other reasons. For as prominent and well-developed Manjome is, even getting his own subplots like finding a path independent of his rich family and overcoming his own arrogance, he ultimately gets relegated to a sorta comic relief character and part of Judai's posse, which basically means he's helpless against major threats and must be saved by Judai. Season 4 reverses course again where Manjome is propped up to the extent of defeating Edo and arguably even Judai, but when I talk about wasted characters, this unorganized development is a part of that, because it screams that the writers aren't really sure where to go with the character after their initial plan, which for Manjome basically wrapped up in Season 2. As good a duelist as Manjome is, he's no match for the whims of the writers. Coming in at number 3 is Edo Phoenix. Edo was the perfect character to introduce in Season 2, a top-ranked pro-duelist that allows the story to expand beyond the confines of Duel Academy. He takes Judai to the brink with a randomly assembled deck, takes down arguably the best duels from Duel Academy, then proceeds to take down the other arguably best duels from Duel Academy. His backstory of his father being murdered is a classic origin story that results in Edo becoming a vigilante, anti-hero type character, serving as a nice contrast to Judai not just in terms of Destiny hero versus Elemental hero, but even in his no-nonsense approach to the game versus Judai's carefree attitude. Edo is ultimately able to avenge his father's death and acquire the final card he designed and the ultimate Destiny Hero card, Destiny Hero Plasma. You would think this would make him even more formidable, but from that point onward he is littered with losses. Yes, most if not all of these are plot driven, but then why write it like that at all? They clearly wanted to introduce a prominent duelist from the Pro League to simply serve as a measuring stick for others to beat, whether that be Judai, Sayo, Amon, or Manjome. But if the standard, so to speak, is beat over and over again, each subsequent victory over him looks less impressive than the last. So by the time Manjome beats him, it's like, alright, what else is new? Coming in at number 2 is Daichi Misawa. Misawa is the poster child for forgotten characters. He features prominently in Season 1 and is a very sensibly written character. You have a school for dueling, so it makes sense to have a super studious and analytical guy feature in the group. His intellect and preparation enables him to take down Manjome, and for a little while even primes him as Judai's rival. The end of Season 1 though starts to reverse this as he loses his first duel to a 7-star despite being propped up as perhaps the 3rd best duelist among the students. Season 2 continues this reversal as he goes from being his own person to wanting the approval and attention of others, ultimately capping off in him running off naked. Misawa does appear in Season 3 and is the one to shed light on Yubel's plan, but ultimately the writers finally decided they can't figure out where to go with his character, so they keep him in the Dimension World. Imagine you're Misawa's parents, you send him off to a school for card games and then are told he disappeared into an alternate dimension with an Amazon.
My baby boy! Build your own future with your girlfriend.
Needless to say, Misawa arguably has the steepest decline in terms of potential a character displayed from the onset to where he ultimately landed, making him the most forgotten character of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. But what's worse than being forgotten? Being disappointing, and that gives the title of the most wasted character of GX to Sho. Sho plays the typical role of best friend to the protagonist, though that's a role that obviously isn't as clear-cut as the seasons go on, given the number of characters introduced as potential BFFs with Judai. Still, Sho appears to hold the mantle from start to finish, being the only one of the old crew to not be sacrificed by Braun in Dimension World. Sho has some nice moments specific to his subplots, like his relationship with his older brother. Another subplot meant to be relatable to the kids watching is his lack of confidence as a duelist, but the bigger problem is that his role in each of the main plots is inconsequential, which can't be said for anyone else on this list. He does nothing against the 7 stars in Season 1, nothing against Sayo or the Society of Light in Season 2, literally subjects himself to being just an observer while his best friend is corrupted in Dimension World in Season 3, and does nothing against Darkness or the Truemen in Season 4. And it's not like there weren't opportunities. Sho could easily have been written to avenge his brother's sacrifice to Camila in Season 1, or been the one to free Judai from the clutches of the Supreme King in Season 3. But at every turn where Sho could have stepped up, he stepped down, making him the most disappointing character, and thus the most wasted character in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. So that's my list of top 10 wasted characters from GX. Again, an assortment of characters that were either underutilized, unnecessary, misused, or forgotten. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't let this video go to waste. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Catch y'all later.